There you go, get the technology sorted out. I've taken a bit of a different approach, I guess, because there's no way my little brain could cope with all of the papers in the sessions, and particularly put on top of that the contributor one. So I focused just on the main review papers and tried to get a bit of a theme out of that. So, and I'm just focusing on future needs, not the outcomes, if you like, just future needs, where we want to go. And I think on Theo's work in processed meats, there's going to be a continued need to actually work towards improving the health status of those. And innovation is going to be the key, which I think his paper demonstrated that you need that. And we're going to need to continue to educate consumers about the benefits of meat consumption. That one worked. So, just in this nutritive value of human health area, there was a recent workshop in Scandinavia in November, and an overview review paper was published in Meat Science from that particular event. And I've captured here a press release which is on the web that comes from that workshop, and you can read that and see what it says. But basically, the press here, the Times of India, I don't know what their audience is, but I imagine it's pretty large, have captured this research and come to a conclusion about eating red meat. And we've had some discussion about that. Declan was talking about that also this morning, and they're basically saying don't consume red meat based on that study. That's the study that was published in Meat Science, and below is a part of the abstract that came from that study, and you can see that it says that there's an inconsistent underlying mechanisms are unclear. In fact, that was the abstract of this work. So the Times of India has actually interpreted it wrong. But the interesting thing since then, I've had 2 letters to the editors of the authors of this work actually disputing the abstract and the wording in the abstract. So my message is, if we're going to communicate these things, we ought to get it correct. It's essential. So future needs, I think too that the work that we've seen particularly from the US, and Declan mentioned it also this morning, in terms of looking at epidemiological studies, I think a lot of the time they're probably very flawed. I think there's probably a lot of confounding in them, and the conclusions that come out and the strength of the relationships upon which they're based, I suspect are actually probably not that sustainable or not that robust. And it strikes me that what we actually need is some good intervention studies that demonstrate the benefit of red meat. This is where we try to control all the confounding factors and actually get some good science. And it seemed that this was a great opportunity for some across-country cooperation to do that. If the red meaters really want to be uniformed on this issue, get the various countries together, whether they're Canada, US, Australia, European countries, and fund a joint study to do a really detailed intervention study. 2 years ago in Montreal, Stuart Phillips gave a really insightful paper about the concept of eating protein-rich foods, and also integrating that with exercise, not vigorous exercise, and with the idea of actually helping reduce muscle wasting, particularly in elderly people. And again, this is a part of the message that we need to get across. You know, exercise is vital in all of this. You know, eat red meat and exercise, and Declan even mentioned it again this morning about, you know, all the muscle jerkies going and getting high protein diets. In terms of genetics and meat quality, look, this is a big area. This week in Vancouver, the World Genetics Conference is on. There's 1,500 scientists at that conference, so some of my colleagues from Australia were telling me. So it's a huge event. And genetics is everywhere now, and particularly now with the genome and all the work there. I think what we tried to demonstrate, or what I tried to demonstrate yesterday in my paper, is that geneticists need the guidance of meat scientists so that they get a balance about how they go about that whole procedure. Because there are some examples of where geneticists have been let loose, if you like, and we've seen some detrimental effects in terms of meat science. Also in terms of that, yeah, I can see you told me time's up. Meat science, we must ensure that we have industry application. It's got to be on our radar, and that's again what Declan was emphasising. Science for the sake of science, mustn't be the sole focus. Yes, you need some fundamental science, but you've got to think about industry application. When we come to genetics and that issue, my plea is to you, if you're doing this sort of work, make sure that you can demonstrate that your size, whatever they are, they fit into a spectrum of genetic profile, and that you can actually ensure that they've got adequate representation. I don't like, as the editor of Meat Science, having to reject your papers because they're not designed properly. And that last point is related to that also. In this area of nutrition, genetic interactions, make sure you've got adequate replication. Thank you.